Hello and welcome back to the TCM podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and as you can see from the screen, we've decided that we're going to sack Kagi off for this episode. Everyone's had enough of him and his takes. You'll see him on TikTok no matter wherever you go. So you got me, Rob, this evening. I'm joined by Harrison, and who's this third member that we've found? Harrison, who's he?
Newcomer. Well,
we got Ben back for his first appearance in about 6 to 12 months, something like that. The dodgy Wi-Fi has finally decided to work tonight.
Well, it's nice to feel welcomed back into the TCM talk. Things evolve, and I come in. We keep it fluid.
Yeah, exactly. So we only felt it was right after that remarkable first test between India and England that we jump on and we'd have a little bit of a chat about what went down, and then what we're thinking ahead of the second test starting on Friday. We're recording this Tuesday evening, although you might not even see this before the second test starts because we're relying on Kagi to edit this on Thursday.
He's got Thursday all day free, so make that notice.
He said right. That is. Well, we'll see about that. So yeah, Ben, seeing as you're back in the fold, we'll start with you. Just your reaction to that first test, mate, because it was ridiculous.
I mean, I just wrote in my notes. It's just, as much as it's going to be a cliche thing, it's peak basketball, isn't it? It's taking high risks and it's throwing everything into leaning into the talents and the abilities that you've got in that squad, and continuing to push past, the risks when they present themselves. It was a pitch that turned. It was a pitch that kept low. They went and they got 246 in the first innings. It wasn't really enough. And they just pushed on in the exact same vein in the second innings. And it was, this was very much the quintessential blueprint for what a Brendan McCullum test side and a Ben Stokes test side are trying to do, against a side that haven't lost a series since, lost a handful of tests since 2013, but haven't lost a series since 2013. So, it's incredible.
I think as well, Harrison, we'd gone a little bit of a while without baseball, and obviously the World Cup has come and gone, and the lesson about that, the better from an English point of view. But it's been a while since we've had red ball cricket. Just a nice gentle ease back into it, isn't it? Just a nice gentle ease back.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely the hunger and kind of the thirst that needed to be quenched almost a month from the England fans for basketball to return. And I think if you asked a lot of people on Friday evening, they'd probably be asking to fast forward the next few weeks and kind of forget the tour of India ever happened. But that's probably the special part of this England team, the fact they hauled themselves off the canvas in so many ways and came back swinging in such an emphatic manner. I don't think you could have really foreseen it coming. And I mean, it's so special. And I just emphasise what Ben said a moment ago. It's just a team and environment that is so perfect and functional at the moment to succeeding in the highest pressures and in the unlikeliest situations. And I mean, full credit to Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum for that, and then for everyone else who kind of comes into it and feeds off it and performs in the manner they do, because that was, I mean, I still don't know how England actually won that test, because that's one you, in any part of the world, you shouldn't win, let alone India against this Indian side who have been dominant in the test arena for years, especially at home.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the scorecard, England 155 for 7 after not even 50 overs of that first innings, and they somehow pull it back to win by 28 runs. I didn't catch a lot of the test. I just caught the ending, so I caught the best part, you could say. But we talk about momentum a lot in sports, and you see it in basketball. In American sports, it tends to be a bigger thing. The NFL and NBA, like they talk about, that's when the momentum shifted. In football games, there might be a counter attack or something like that, or something similar, like a VAR decision that turns the momentum of the game. And I feel like once Ollie Pope started to get into a rhythm in that second innings, and no matter who was batting with at the other end, I know Ben Foakes played a good supporting role to him, and he had good lower order support from Ahmed and Hartley. It just felt like England had all the momentum with them, and that's all this England test side needs. They just need a sniff, and even then, it can be literally the smallest possible bit of momentum, and they'll take it and turn it into something massive. Ben Ben, I know we'll get on to Ollie Pope's ridiculous 196 in a little bit, but if we flip to the India side of things, how damaging do you feel this is going to be for them? Like I said, they haven't lost a home series since 2013, and after having a lead of effectively 200 on first innings, they've gone and lost. So how damaging do you think this is going to be?
I mean, certainly in India, and with the battle that was going on between Indian fans and English fans in the lead up as well. Obviously, everything that happened with Shoaib Bashir, and there was a little bit of kind of conflicts going on in certain spaces beforehand, and clearly a lot of bragging rights to be won. I think this is damaging for India, especially with how much they dominate the cricket landscape at the minute. But actually, this is the first time since I can't remember when, but a very long time, that they've not won for 3 games in a row at home. So I think that starts with Australia last year, and obviously goes through to this. But yeah, I mean, it's the manner of the defeat, isn't it? Like, especially when they had so many opportunities in that game and across the Test match to really stake their claim on it and really push ahead. 246. To be where they were with Jaiswal, and then KL Rahul, making what should have really been converted into hundreds. And what so often with India, you see these players just come up and churn, big hundreds out, and they didn't take that. But I think really there's been a certain amount of, I don't want to say luck on the England side, but things very much falling in their favour. And I think India are going to have their backs up going into Vizag, and they're going to come back. And, I know they've got huge misses in KL Rahul and Ravindra Jadeja now, Jadeja especially. But, this Indian side, I think they're gonna come back, and it's going to be a really, really tasty series. I think this is the best result that could have happened for the next 4 matches.
And adding on to that, Harrison, Ben there just mentioned the 2 losses. They are still going to be without Virat Kohli, who may no longer be the captain, but he's still the talisman in that middle order for India. How do they even begin to, go about, we know there's going to be a new wicketkeeper behind the sticks for them in this next Test match with Rahul being out. Jadeja is virtually unreplaceable, isn't he? So how much, we talked about momentum, how much more does that swing more in England's favour of, India's arguably 2 best players from that first Test are now out, and they still won't have Virat Kohli available?
It's massive. You talk about like the extra 1% you want to try and get in sport, and when you're a team torn on the subcontinent, especially India, you need any little bit of help you can at times, and England have got that through a bit of fortune at the same time. But I mean, Ben put it, Rahul and Jadeja, that first innings, they took the game away from England, and both of them should have completely taken the game away from England and finished it there and then at the halfway point of the match, but they didn't, and that's what obviously allowed England back into what they did. But from the Indian perspective, you're now looking at yourself and you're thinking, okay, we've now lost probably one of the best, if not the best, all-rounder across all formats in world cricket in Jadeja. That's not replaceable. You're probably looking at something like Kuldeep Yadav, or they have called up Washington's Sundar into the squad as well. So he's probably the best like for like they've got, but he is not of the same quality at all, without disrespecting him in any way. And then Rahul, without Kohli, you take that middle order out, and you've got Shubman Gill at 3 out of form, Shreyas Iyer at 4, who's hit and miss, Rahul in there, and then Jadeja was at 6, and then the keeper, Barrett, at 7, who did, to be fair to him, I thought he did a pretty decent job, considering he's always kind of been on the sidelines of that squad for a while with Pant and others filling that role. But there's a little bit of, because they're going to be inexperienced regardless in that Indian middle order. I think, not sure they're tipping to replace Rahul, but I know they've called up Sarfraz Khan to the squad, who's scored runs for fun in the Ranji Trophy, and then got a fantastic century against the Lions as well the other week. So if he's coming, he's a dashing young player who could score runs at breakneck speed and really kind of rival Bazball for the attacking desires and freedom of playing the game. But India now are going forward with a kind of the core of their side ripped out, at least for the next Test. Kohli, I think by all reports, will be back for the third, and you hoping away a bit for the series. The other two are back for the third as well, because you want kind of the best 11s out there doing battle on the field. But this is now another great opportunity for England to kind of hammer home the advantage from the first test. And I mean, if England were to go 2-0 up in a series in India from the first two, you'd be laughing. And I mean, the chance is there.
We can't not talk about Tom Hartley after getting smacked for 6 first ball in Test cricket to still then come back and take 7 for in the second innings, I believe, and 9 overall for the match. Ben, this guy is... County fans will have known Tom Hartley for a while. I think when the squad was announced and Rob Key talked about the release point and the height, there was a lot of scepticism from England fans going, well, there are other spinners out there who have a better batting average and have a better bowling average than Tom Hartley. Why is he there? And Ben Stokes has backed him to the hills, and therefore Tom has shown why he belongs in that Test team at the minute.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think Hartley, to me, the selection, of course, it raised a few eyebrows initially, but I think to me, he actually epitomizes the philosophy and the selection style of Stokes and McCullum so far in this era, because like you say, I think it's 12 first-class matches that he played and maybe 40 wickets or something going into this, and people were there calling for Liam Dawson, and he's probably unlucky to have not had more Test cricket in the last few years. But with Hartley, it speaks to this idea in this new regime that you're picking players for their very highest potential and what they could possibly do. It's not solidity. It's not necessarily, proven track records. Look at Zach Crawley. It's for those those double hundreds against Pakistan. It's for those blistering starts that get you to 150 before lunch. These are what England are picking for, and I think that's what's so refreshing to see. And we've seen with Hartley, yes, he got smashed in that first innings, but to then come back, some of the deliveries he was bowling on that last day, that is what you want from your left arm spinner. The reason that Gill got out and the reason that Jaiswal got out in that second innings, it comes down to his height, and that they were, they probably don't play those shots to Leach or to Ahmed, but the height and the unusual release points are why they've pressed that little bit forward and snaffled those 2 catches. And that's, it's just lovely to see it pay off, because, it is high risk and it is high reward. And this has just been, reward in abundance in this Test match. And Hartley, it's lovely to see Hartley. He seems like a really great bloke and already got a Barbie Army song as well. So I'm sure that'll be ringing out for the next few Tests. But yeah, it sums up the era, really, I think.
The ball to Barrett in the second innings where he bowled him it's a spinner's like ideal delivery. That the height, the dip, the turn off the pitch, and he just beats Barrett all ends up. And you don't. That's something that we'd expect out of if English spinners pass. That's like Moeen Ali, Adil Rashid type bowling, and then Tom Hartley's coming here on Test debut. And you've got to imagine, no matter how positive the environment is and how much confidence he has in himself, after that first innings, I think everyone would have forgiven him if he'd have gone into his shell a little bit. And well, they only had 230 to defend. I think everyone would have forgiven Hartley if he just not going to be over aggressive, just going to go for maybe 3-4 and an over, no boundaries. We're just going to keep it tight, and I'm going to try and set other people up. But the fact that he's empowered to come back from that and bowl those deliveries and kind of just run through that India lineup. He got their top 3 out. He then picked up Akshar Patel, Barrett, as I say, and he got Ashwin and Siraj stumped. And I think people will look at those stumpings and go, well, they're just looking to put pressure back on the bowler. Yeah, fair play. That's probably what they were doing, but Hartley still has to bowl the balls to get them in that area, and he's got to tempt them enough to come down, and he's got to remove that fear factor of, if they connect with this, I could be gone for 6 here. So that's what really impressed me. And then Harrison, talking about the other spinners in the side, obviously Rayan Ahmed, second Test match, not an awful lot of Red Bull stuff for Leicestershire. But again, as Ben said, you're being picked for the highest of ceilings, not the lowest. The highest ceiling, not the lowest of floors, or the highest of floors, I should say. What did you see out of Ahmed in that first test that we could be looking forward to more of as this series progresses?
It's just the same with everyone else. There's clear desire to want to succeed, and regardless of the environment and situations you're being thrown into, he's been given the ball at difficult times, and he had some difficult moments. But I mean, it's kind of the story of Rehan Ahmed is getting lost. Kind of the fact that it was only his second test, he is still actually only 19, I believe. It's kind of crazy to think because he has become an established part of the white ball setup in the last kind of 6 to 12 months, and kind of here and there in the test arena, and he actually still is so young and raw. Hasn't played a lot of red ball cricket at kind of, even compared to Tom Hartley, the difference is probably there quite maybe stark at times in terms of the level and quality of red ball cricket they've played, and being a leg spinner as well kind of throws in that extra kind of strings to your bow you need to kind of succeed in test arena, with the variations and skill set just naturally harder than your left arm orthodox. But again, with Rehan Ahmed, it kind of brings back to one man, and that one man is Ben Stokes. He's same with Hartley. I think he is the perfect captain for any player, and I think Hartley said something along the lines of that after the test himself as well, because he just knows you're going to get backed regardless of what happens. Stokes are giving you your full back in. Even if you go a couple of sixes over, you're getting over it. I mean, Tom Hartley, he could have been Joe. No offense to Joe at all, but probably in his captaincy, he takes Hartley off after a couple of overs in this opening spell on that first day, and that's probably confidence ruined a bit. But Stokes kept going, and Hartley got a bit closer on that first day before properly getting going second day, and then into that fourth day. But I think that's the spinners can't ask for a better captain than Ben Stokes, and Rehan Ahmed and Hartley are going to learn so much of him and benefit so much from Stokes as the leader in the remaining 4 tests, and with Jack Leach's presence there as well. Because I mean, credit to him for fighting through the injury he had. It was a little kind of funny scene when he took that wicket of Shreyas Iyer in the 4th innings, where he kind of fast walked in a little celebration, knowing he can't really move the left knee in many ways. And I think that kind of is another way of summing up this England side. They really are just there to fight right to the end and fight through whatever pain is needed, and they will do it.
Yeah, hopefully, I think. Oh, go on.
Someone wrote a piece, I think it was Bethushan, for ESPN, and he said like he's got an unbelievable way with words, and he said something along the lines of like, when he got you had this stallion who's been like raised in Mumbai, who's just got out to a lad from Taunton, like a bold bloke from Taunton, and it just like you can't look at Jack Leach and not just like, you know, have so much respect, but also just love the fact that, you know, he looks like a teacher playing for England, and it creates beautiful moments, and I love it.
Moving on, the wicket-keeping debate, because let's face it, it's not England without a wicket-keeping debate. I think I'm just going to set it very clear here. Ben Foakes' decision is justified, and there should not be a wicket-keeping debate as long as these two are being talked about. There is no debate here for me. It is Ben Foakes. Come at me.
Oh, open invitation. Well, like
yeah, who we I'm usually waiting for your.
If you want,
I'll let you go. For your name, defend your namesake.
Yeah, there's just like this kind of, I think, you know, when he was out there, I want to talk about him with the bat first of all, because I do think that's really important. That obviously, if you are going to bring him in, that is, you know, he does offer value, and there's just this really calming presence when Foakes is at the crease. Even if he gets a string of low scores, you still just go out there, and there was always this inevitability that, okay, he might not get 40, he might not get 50, he might get a 20 or a 30, but he's gonna bat the situation, and he's gonna bat. He reads the situation so well, and he's always done that. For the wicket keeping, I mean, you know, he's what he gives you, apart from obviously the expert, you know, the glovemanship and the stuff up to the stumps and things like that, is, you know, we saw when Bairstow was keeping that there's just so much, sort of almost every innings, there's something that, especially in the summer, you know, there's something that can be talked about. There's a talking point. There's something that's putting him in the spotlight. And I think for someone like Bairstow, it does play with his mind, and it does affect him. With Foakes, no one bats an eyelid. There might be a dropped catch here and there, but you know he is the best gloveman in England and probably in the top 2 or 3 in the world, if not the. And it just gives that stability in the side. And like I say, having him coming in at 8 or 7 and batting, you know, once you've lost five wickets, you know, you really can't underrate that. However, on the flip side of that, I do wonder how much it impacts Bairstow, because we know he likes to keep, and I think we know he likes to be involved in the game, but he also seems to have kind of flipped sides throughout his whole career as to what he really wants to do. And I do wonder whether it sort of toys with his ego a little bit, this back and forth. I don't know what you think, Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult with Bairstow because he's always been so kind of vocal and always voiced his opinion whenever kind of maybe something isn't going his way, or when he maybe, I think something always comes to mind is that 100 he got in Sri Lanka in the third test back in 2018, I think, when he was kind of written off. He came in at 3 and pulled that innings off, and that was kind of a big deal in the press with his interviews after. But I think it's kind of probably, again, testament to the setup they've got. You do have to manage egos in a team sport. That's inevitable. That's part and parcel of the life, and probably Bairstow's one of the maybe could well be one of the harder ones to deal with in that sense, trying to keep him happy and give him a clear role that he is happy with in the side that benefits everyone at the same time. Because, I mean, I echo what you say, Ben, in terms of Foakes. I think it was George Dobell did an article earlier today about how Foakes, again, it's again the innings in a partnership or in a game that will not take like the headlines. Pope has done that, and fair play to him as well. But Foakes is a supporting hand. Without Foakes, there was no Pope 196, to be quite honest, because that was a very important partnership. Because I remember thinking when Stokes got out, that's probably us done for, because I thought we need to at least get to parity with Stokes and Pope at the crease to have any sort of chance. But Foakes came in and he looked a natural. He looked just assured. He knew what he was doing. He was able to play his own way, which I think is the key way, because a lot of people have always talked about his issues batting the tail and maybe doesn't bat quick enough. But the situation demanded him to bat in a certain way and just support Pope, and he supported him in the correct manner. And full credit to him, because I mean, his glove work is top notch. There's nothing really more you can add to the fact he's just, again, an assured presence beyond the stump. So okay, there's one slight mishap for a drop catch early on day 2, but apart from that, there's nothing else to report on the negative side from his keeping. And I mean, keep him in his side for the rest of the tests, and then we can have to return to some of the debates when Harry Brook probably inevitably returns to the fold, and you're trying to fit too many people into not enough spots.
That's exactly what I was about to come on to talk about. Like, the debate has always been, since Harry Brook got in when Bairstow did that foot injury and Brook got his run in the test team, and obviously it was Foakes at 7 with the gloves and Brook was in at 5 or at 6. That's where the issue England have kind of comes in, because you've got 3 people for 2 spots, and because you've got Bairstow there who can keep, it's like, well, the saying in Test cricket is you always pick your best gloveman. You don't pick the best batter who can keep. You pick your best gloveman, and if you're going to go off that, it's Foakes. But it just comes to it. Someone will probably have the Bairstow averages chart of Bairstow's positions of 3 to 7 in Test cricket, and his best position and his best averages have been I think at 5 without the gloves. But you can't fit Brook, Bairstow and Foakes into the same team without being even more unbalanced than on paper England currently are at the minute. You know, if you wanted to do that, you'd have Ben Foakes at 8. You could get away with it in the subcontinent because you're probably going more spin heavy anyway. As we've seen, you know, Brendan McCullum's have floated today that, fuck it, we might just go 4 spinners and not have a frontline seamer and like have some of that. But, you know, if we're talking about, like you say, Harrison, looking ahead to that home summer, where we've got Sri Lanka and I think it was Sri Lanka and the Windies. We're going to presume that all 3 of them are going to be fit and ready. So who does get that nod? If Foakes and Bairstow both go on to have very good tours, how do you? We're not at a point there where Brooks are getting dropped. You can't fit the 3 guys into the 2 spots. It's just it's really difficult. The only other thing I would really say is that, on that thing is, you know, Bairstow could have potentially. I mean, this has been well documented. He's not been treated with the same consistency in terms of batting positions. He has kind of been the guy that has been moved around. You look at Joe Root. Joe Root, apart from when he started his Test career as an opener, he's kind of always been at 4, maybe a couple jumps up to 3 when needed because, you know, he felt he needs to take responsibility. But he's kind of always been at 4. Ben Stokes has always been a 5 or a 6. Josh Butler has never been asked to do much more above 7, maybe 6 and keep. But that's about it. Bairstow, you know, it's a jump up to 3. It's the 5. It's can you bat 5 and not have the gloves? Can you bat 7, not have the gloves? Can you bat 7 with the gloves? Can you bat 5 with the gloves? You know, Bairstow is just the guy that's been constantly moved around. But where we got the best out of him was that 2022 summer was batting 5 without the gloves. I feel like that's where you need to go. But Harry Brook has a big part to say in all this. Now, I know Ben has done some research on this bit, so I will hand over to this part. I did tease at the start. Pope's 196. First of all, just before you go into it, I was gutted that he didn't get the double century when I looked at it. I thought everyone was waxing lyrical when he finished day 3 on 148 or 6 not out, and I was like, he's probably going to be on for the double ton here. And then when I eventually woke up and checked it, I saw he was out for 196. I was gutted for him because it just deserved, having watched the highlights, it deserved that. It deserved the momentum thing, but the momentous thing of having a double century in India just deserved it. And Ben, I know you did some research today, so I'll hand this bit off over to you for this discussion.
Well, I think I'm gonna get all the mystique out of the way and say that I've come to the conclusion that I think it is the best innings by an Englishman in India of all time. With all things taken into consideration, and I don't think it's far off being the greatest Test innings of any foreign player in India. I think when I was thinking about sort of the esteem that it's held in, I sort of thought, you know, that Test cricket's been around for so long that there's going to be so many innings to look through and to kind of, you know, pick through and compare Popes up against. But the truth is that people just don't really do that well against India in the main. You know, you look at some of I think Jonathan Liu did an article a couple of years ago on the 30 best Test innings of all time, and I think literally there was Peterson's, and I think Dean Jones in 1986, 1987 for Australia against India. There were 2 against India in the top 30, and I think that really speaks to how difficult it is to score runs in India, and it just makes this even. You know, I mean, people will make the comparisons to Kevin Peterson's 186 in Mumbai just over 10 years ago, but I just want to speak about the context that Pope's come into this under. You know, not having played any sort of cricket, June or July I think it was, so a good 7 months, made vice captain, but really having justified that with runs. And I think that again speaks to the captaincy and to Ben Stokes and McCullum instilling that confidence within Pope that despite your form, despite, you know, what's going on with the bat, you're a key part of this squad and we believe in your talents. And I think my favorite part of it all really is you know, to go out and what looked like a typical, as we've come to know, typical Ollie Pope innings in that first innings, where he looked a little bit shaky and got out in sort of a very jittery way, to come back and play like this. It was masterful. The variation and the consistency of the sweeps in terms of the different types of sweeps he was playing, but just the incredible conviction that he was playing them with. You know, we see Duckett with that sort of conviction, but he was doing. I think, you know, I read somewhere today that he was doing it off of the bowler's best balls, and that is the sort of thing that nullifies people like Ashwin and nullifies people like Jadeja. And it was just magnificent to watch. And I think the best part about it all was that going into that next day, he'd done all that hard work. He grinded out for hours on hours on hours you know, in those conditions, and he had to go away, sleep on it, and come back and realise that England was still so far behind the 8 ball. And what does he do? He goes back out there and he scores another 80, 90 runs on that second day of his innings. And I think the focus and the the concentration to go and do that was fantastic. And yeah, I really do think I watched Root's double hundred a couple of years ago in India, watching Peterson and watching Cook back in 2012. But I think this is the pinnacle.
I think for me, the only one that comes close would be Peterson.
Yeah,
but I wasn't a huge fan of cricket back then, so it was kind of just, you just took it as a, oh my god, that's amazing, without actually delving really deep into it. That's the only one that really ever come close to me is Peterson's 186. Harrison, I'm not sure about you, but I feel like what Ben said there, he's almost convinced me. He's almost convinced me at this point, like it is, but I'm not sure what you think.
Well, it's the three innings Ben has mentioned come to mind for me. Pope, Root a couple of years ago, and then that KP one. There's a couple of the Strauss and Cook era that obviously I didn't really see, or they aren't talked about as much, but I know they still deserve their own kind of talking point in this sphere as such. But I mean, when you're coming out of an innings that Pope did, and you're getting it lauded by like Rahul Dravid and other people as one of the best kind of sweep and reverse sweep displays they've ever seen in cricket and in Indian conditions, I mean, that speaks for itself. That was, as Ben put it, the environment, all the situation Pope came into, the other factors, the mitigating factors for why he hasn't played cricket, the first innings, to play with such confidence. And I think the main one is just the freedom and clarity in mind. What he was going to do was the right option, regardless of whatever that fantastic trio of Indian spinners threw up at him, and then the Bumrah and Siraj as well. He was going to be fine. I mean, the most baffling shots would be the ones he was putting over his head, almost kind of reverse still scooping in a way, not just your bog standard one. His grip was the other way around, which I know he does anyway. Sometimes just sweeping off the wrong foot as well. But that kind of ingenuity to kind of come up with these new approach and really get on top of the Indian bowlers, because that was a noticeable fitting as well. I think India and the chase just kind of were happy to sit there. Rohit tried to start doing some sweeps just before he got out, but I have to say it didn't look natural. Trying to sweep the England spinners in the same way that the England batters did against the Indian bowlers, and Pope constantly putting you under pressure. And if you're hitting your bad ball getting put away, your good ball getting you put away for runs, as a bowler, you kind of just stood there a bit lost what to do. And Pope executed that perfectly. And I think it could well go down as probably the best innings bowling Englishman, and maybe an overseas in India.
Unless you guys have anything else to add to this first set, I think we should probably now look ahead to the second one. Starts on Friday. I still will not be braving the 4 a.m. start. If you are, I salute you, but it is just simply too early in the day for me. I know Harrison had the option to get up on his 21st birthday for an early start. Did you manage it in the end?
I actually did. I had an aim to wake up at 5, but I woke up at 20 past 4, so I got an extra 40 minutes of Ollie Pope batting. So, I mean, that was a fantastic start to the day. And England won on that day as well. So, I mean, you can't have it any better.
Starts on Friday. Obviously, we've spoken about India's, selection issues. Where do we think they're going to go with their replacements? Because, as you mentioned, no KL Rahul and no Ravindra Jadeja. Jadeja is just a ridiculous cricketer. Like, the guy is a joke. I think back to 2019 Cricket World Cup. He basically was a specialist sub-fielder for India. I don't think he played many of the actual games, but he was just in the field every game as a sub-fielder. And remember that game that England played India at Edgbaston, he took an absolute ridiculous diving catch. He's going to be a big miss. Also, the left arm spin option is going to be a huge miss for India to have those different angles to attack. Harris, I'll come to you first on this one. If I'm going to press you here, name who would your 2 Indian replacements be for KL Rahul and Ravindra Jadeja?
I've remembered the spare batter India had in their squad originally before Sarfaraz Khan and Rajat Patidar, who I believe scored a fantastic 150-plus score against the Lions as well, similar to Sarfaraz Khan. So I think he's coming in for Rahul in that middle order, a left-handed batter. Probably he could maybe go up to 3. That's kind of his preferred position, and give Shubman Gill the opportunity to drop one further and protect him a little bit more, give him a bit more security in his spot to try and give him a chance to find runs. But then The other one, I think they're probably going to go Washington Sundowns for Jadeja. They need a bit of batting. The fact is, Jadeja was batting 6 in this test. Although they did throw Axar Patel up to 5 in that second innings, but Jadeja is still kind of a top 6 batter for India in home conditions in this side. So I think Sundowns for Jadeja, Pakistan for Rahul. And the interesting one, which would be, I guess we'll find out in the coming days once kind of the pitch in itself comes clear what that looks like. They could maybe look at Kuldeep Yadav for Mohammad Siraj, only bowled, I think, 11 overs across the test, and just stick to Bumrah as a sole seamer and match England's approach from the first test.
Ben, do you agree with Harrison? Would those be your picks, or would you go in a slightly different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading the Sky Sports squad announcement earlier, and they sort of seem to have wedged in Kuldeep Yadav as the initial replacement. I would agree with Harrison. I think Washington Sundar, from what I've seen of him, is a more like for like replacement for Jadeja. And I think he does have. He's probably a better batsman than Kuldeep's not bad, but he's probably a better batsman than Kuldeep as well. So I think he's certainly the replacement there. Harrison mentioned, in terms of a KL Rahul replacement, Sarfaraz Khan earlier. I think he's a really interesting sort of case study in India over the last few years, because I think there's been a lot on his fitness issues. I'm pretty sure he averages like 60s or 70s in the Ranji Trophy and Indian domestic cricket, and is sort of seen as this, almost like a Wasim Jafar. Like, how has he never made it into the Indian Test side? But I think there's fitness concerns there. But I mean, I think in terms of X factor, he may be a bit more of an unknown quantity to someone like England, who probably will have seen quite a lot of Patidar, albeit in the IPL. So yeah, I'd maybe throw in a wild card and go for Sarfaraz Khan.
And then on the England side of things, they do have to see how Jack Leach holds up. I think for me, if Jack Leach can't go, I would be tempted to bring in Jimmy Anderson instead of giving Shoaib Bashir a debut. I don't think, obviously, what he went through will leave the political side out of it, but to fly from England to the UAE, to then fly back to England, to then fly back to India, that's a lot of, I don't even think he probably would have got over the jet lag. I know he rocked up on day 4 at Hyderabad to see the team win, but I just think, he won't have had a lot of training time. The body still takes a while. And I think this is, again, a thing that doesn't get talked about enough with his leadership. They also look after the players physically and mentally, which is a huge part to, I think, how they've been able to perform at such a high level for these last 2 and a bit years. Because what is it now, 14 out of the last 7? Foakes has captained 17 tests and England have won 14 of them. Like, you don't get that from just, it's not luck. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to do that. So I think, I don't think throwing Bashir in is the right thing. I do think we will see him at some point in this tour. I just don't think it should be as a replacement for Jack Leach if Leach can't go. I think Jimmy, Mark Wood didn't do a bad job of being the sole seamer, but there will always be questions over at any point he could go down with an injury and not be able to bowl. And as much as the Indians will claim Jimmy Clausen and all that, Jimmy's away record in the subcontinent and particularly India is ridiculous. I saw some stats earlier that in Jimmy's 6 tours to India or something, he has an economy of 1.92 or something like that. Even if he's that is a joke.
That is a joke.
Even if I'm not sure on the wickets. I didn't quite catch the full tweet. If someone could find it, that would be.
I think the average was like 4 like under 15 or something.
Yeah, it's a joke, and I think that's what Bazball might look at it and go, it's a bit of a negative. We're just looking to hold, but we don't like. Yeah, it's hard to go against Bazball, but it's just I feel like with Stokes not bowling, and if Wood does go down, then England really are struggling. So I do think Jimmy in for Jack Leach if Leach can't go. I think if Jack Leach can go, you just keep the same team and you go again. I don't think there's why change a winning team. But yeah, if Jack Leach can't go, Ben, who would you plump for?
Well, I think it's interesting what you say with Mark Wood, because I was actually thinking in the lead up to this podcast, I was thinking actually I think the exertion of, I know he didn't bowl that many overs, but the exertion for Mark Wood, and we know with how injury prone he is, that I was, yes, it would take out a lot of pace, but I was actually thinking that you bring Anderson in straight swap for Wood, and he gives you that control and a bit more variation. Straight swap, yeah. I to be honest, I think realistically, probably you go with Anderson. I don't like the idea of going with 4 spinners. I think, like we said earlier, things have gone right for England in Hyderabad. Have thrown a certain amount of wickets away and have let England wrestle momentum back. With some of the wickets, but if India bat first in Vizag and we get to, on a really slow track that for whatever reason it maybe isn't turning as much or is a little bit more lifeless, we may get to the end of day one and it be 200 for 1, 200 for 2, and then we're wondering where our variation is. So I think you do have to be careful going that gung ho this early in a series, really.
Harrison, would you be going bowler for bowler? Would you be tempted to maybe go for an all rounder in that spot, or would you stick bowler for bowler?
I wouldn't bother really messing with the balance. I think fair play to Ahmed and Hartley. They did a credible job with the bat and showed they can apply themselves at the positions of 8 and 9 in the Test arena. So I wouldn't mess around there. And I hope Leach is fit, but I think I'd just bring Bashir straight in, because I don't. Regardless of whatever happens with the pitch and whatever, I think you probably still want 3 frontline spinners as such. I'd give Bashir to go alongside. Obviously, you've got Root as well. Your 4 spinners effectively. And then I probably would look at Anderson for Wood as well. Just as Ben said, just to freshen it up. You don't want, whilst Wood did a credible job to him and bowled his heart out as he does in every game he plays, in any situation, has done countless spells in the subcontinent for little reward. Sri Lanka comes to mind as well in that sense, but just to keep things fresh, because it is a little bit of a short turnaround between these 2 tests. Not sure, too short the gap between 2 and 3, but I mean, we know Anderson has the skill set to do anything, whatever he wants on whatever surface, and would add maybe an extra string to the bow the England attack didn't have first game, whilst you do kind of lose that high pace aspect. So you hope and pray a bit Leach is fit, otherwise you just go, okay, Bashir, you're in, and then you see how Wood is, but probably bring Anderson in for him.
Everyone always talks about in India, it's spin to win. You're going to need spin. You're going to need variations. But Ben, could you see in India continuing with that, with Bumrah and Siraj up top and getting a result that way?
I think it's really difficult to sort of. You're right. People do write off and write off seam almost instantly when you talk about playing cricket in India, and I think it's because there's not really a guaranteed method of how to succeed with pace in the subcontinent. Really, you saw the spell that Bumrah produced, early in that first innings, and actually that was that was perhaps one of the most impressive elements. Sorry, in the second innings, impressive elements of Pope's innings, is how he dealt with that and moved on from that. So, I think obviously Bumrah is just an unbelievable bowler, and if he can keep that ball reversing throughout the whole series, that is going to play a huge impact. Whilst everyone else is focusing on the spin attacks, Bumrah can keep on coming in and knocking over 2 or 3 early on, and sort of start to get the hump over a few of the England batters. He's going to have a real, a real go over them. Siraj, again, a fantastic bowler, but probably suits more bouncy and pacey pitches. I always love to see, I think he's injured at the minute. I always love Mohammad Shami as an option for India, because I think he's just one of the nicest bowlers to watch in the world. But in terms of that balance, I could see them, like you say, potentially bringing in Kuldeep for Siraj and maybe just trying to smother England with spin a little bit. But Bumrah has shown that there's certainly value in pace bowling, if you've got the quality, and that's why someone like Anderson could prove invaluable for England as well. Even if it is just 1 or 2 spells over the course of a series that turn a game here and there.
And Harrison, to take us to the end, what's your take on this India two-man pace attack?
I mean, I've kind of already touched on it a bit. I mean, Siraj only bowled 11 overs in the test, and Bumrah, and I mean, that little spell he had getting Duckett and Root in day 3 was special and kind of akin to his skill set and what he does on a regular basis. And I think ultimately India most times will kind of know what conditions suit them best and how to exploit them. And I think maybe you could say in hindsight was 2 seamers wrong, but I don't think it was wrong at the same time as they may have benefited from playing extra spinner. They still had kind of a role. I think they maybe they were just happy with Bumrah and the 3 spinners bowling, and Siraj was kind of just there almost making up numbers in a way. But it's just pace will play a part in some point in this series. There's always a lot of talk with India when maybe they lose a test in the manner they did. Will they create a pitch that takes more turn? But then that creates more jeopardy and more of a lottery, which then just feeds into the hands of the opposition. I think that's how they lost the test, or they had a test just like that against Australia. And I think India might have just come out on top of it in the end, or that was the one Australia won. But it kind of is how far do they go, and or do they just stick to strengths? Because they know they were one innings or one batter going on to make a 120 away from winning. Realistically, Rahul Jadeja, as I said earlier, makes that turn. That probably is the door firmly shut after the first innings. So, I mean, for a side as successful as they've been, from an England perspective, I hope they panic and they kind of make some knee-jerk decisions that they would regret. But from an overall perspective, I don't think they should. They should just they know their tried and tested methods. Don't move massively away from that. But if conditions dictate they need to, and that will play to their strengths better, then so be it. Because, I mean, as Ben also put, you've got 2 quality seam bowlers, and Mohammad Shami, I believe, will be coming back in at some point in this series as well. So, I mean, they will definitely want to still be in kind of the overall contest by the time he comes back.
An interesting subplot to watch then as the series develops. I think that's a very nice place to wrap up our first test review and second test preview of the TCM podcast. Thank you both for joining me. Thank you guys for staying and listening and watching, however you've taken in this podcast. We might be back throughout the series. We got no plans firmly in place at this point, but we'll see what can be done. Obviously, we're going to enjoy the series as much as you guys are. So, again, thank you both, Ben and Harrison, for joining me. I'm surprised, Ben, your Wi-Fi has managed to survive this entire recording.
There's been stuff going on behind the scenes.
What would a TCM recording be? What would a TCM recording be without some tech worries? But thank you both for joining me. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.